Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today I am going to be sharing with you July's dish mat of the month. So if you're interested in seeing what I made and making one for yourself, stick around. Thanks for sticking around. Well, can you believe it is almost July? I can't. This summer is just flying by. It's going to be fall before we know it. I know as I was in Hobby Lobby and they have all their fall stuff up now, and I've even seen some Christmas stuff. That's crazy, absolutely crazy. But we need to enjoy summer while it's here, and what perfect way to enjoy summer than to sew patriotic or red, white, and blue or bright summery fabrics and make different projects, right? Well, today I am sharing with you how to make the July dish mat of the month. And here it is. And what's more appropriate for July than a flag? And it is a bright and cheery flag. I used bright reds and bright blues and crisp bright whites. So it is very bright, cheerful, and all about the 4th of July. So I am real happy with the way this one turned out. It is not a hard one to make. The strips are just Quilt-As-You-Go strips, and those are really easy to do. And then we're using the stars that we used in another video. I believe it was for the flag pattern, and I'll put a link in the description box for that video, so if you want to use these stars, you can. Now, there is a simpler way to make this if this intimidates you. I know a lot of us loved a piece, but if you are new to sewing and this right here is easy, but when it comes to this, you're intimidated by it, one thing you can do is just use a piece of blue fabric here, and I'll tell you more about that in the video. And it's super cute that way too. So here is the July's dish mat of the month, and here is how I made it. I hope you get to make one of your own. Thanks for watching. All right, let's get started making our July dish mat of the month. And as always, we need to start with a store purchase dish mat. Now, of course, if you want to use a towel, batting, a couple layers of batting would be necessary. Something that you have at home already, by all means, you can use any of that. If you want to use the foam, oh, what is it called? It's the stuff that you can make bags out of. It's foam, and you use it as a batting in between like purses and stuff. If you want to use that, you can use that too. But the nice thing about using a pre-made dish mat is that you don't have to do the layering for the bottom fabric and putting the batting in and cutting it and all of that stuff. It's already pre-cut, it's already layered, it's super simple. And when you can buy dish mats for under $2.50, you can make this really cheap. Some of the other stuff, the foam batting that you use, that's more expensive than this. So this is something that will be cost effective too. Now, usually I recommend, because it's easy to find and they're cheap, is Hobby Lobby's drying mats. And in their spring shop, they've had these all summer. They still have them. I was there the other day. Now they're 50% off, so they are usually $3.29, but I think the whole season they've been 40% off, and now 50% off. So you're looking at $1.60 or $1.70 for a dish mat. And really you can't do all the other stuff, the fabric lining, the batting, and the time it takes for you to cut that out and stuff for that price. Now I was at my local Ollie's store, and Ollie's is Ollies. They are kind of a discount store that's supposed to get things that maybe are overstocks and stuff like that. Well, they had lots of these dish mats, and they were really pretty. And they had 2 of them in a pack, and they were $4.99. And so I thought I'd buy some of these too, just to keep on in stock. And so that makes these just $2.50 each. You can find them all different sizes, but they're generally close to the same. Some of them are more square, so you'll just have to take that into consideration as you're making yours today if you're using one that's more square. But most of them are rectangular. So whereas this one's 14 by 21, this one says it's 15 by 20, but when I measured, it's actually 14.5 by 19.5. So they're not far off. This one's a little longer, this one's a little taller, and that's all. So let's go ahead, and I've got this one all cut out, or not cut out, but apart from the packaging. And so the next thing you want to do is decide which side do you want to attach your stitching to, your fabric. You can use either side. This is really pretty. And I think I'm going to use this for the backing. And I think I'm going to use this to sew my fabric on. And this is a light color, so it won't be showing through. I will have white stripes in this dish mat. So if I had something really bright or a busy design, a lot of times it will show through. But this will be perfect. I am going to use a friction pin. You could use a regular pen or a pencil, tailor's chalk, any sewing marking pencil, that's fine. This is all going to be sewn over, but you don't want something that's going to bleed through your fabric or something that will show up through your fabric. So just choose something that would work for that. Now for this, again, I'm going to be using my size, but you can adjust it to match your size of mat. So mine is 19.5, and what I want to do is I want to divide this into 3 rectangular sections, and I actually just want to have 2/3 here and 1/3 over here. And if you take 19.5, divide it by 3, that's going to be 6.5 inches. So I could have 6.5 here, 6.5 here, and 6.5 here. So I'm going to put right here on the left a line that's 6.5 inches from the edge. And so here is this one, and here is this one. Now I can match those 2 lines up. And my ruler is actually 6.5 inches, so I can just feel right there that that is right on the edge, and just draw a line so I can see where that is, just like that. Then I'm not going to divide this one because I'm going to use this side for stripes. And I've made it on the left because normally a flag has the stars right here in the upper left-hand corner, and the stripes are on the right. So I'm just following that pattern. You can do it however you like. So I'm going to fold this in half because I want to find the center point. And so when I do, I match my corner and just press it down, and then just right on top there, put a line. Do the same over here. Make sure they are matched perfectly, or the best I can. And pinch it and draw a line. Now when I connect those 2 dots or those 2 lines, I now have a line that's parallel to each of the sides. So I'm going to check and make sure I've got it parallel there. Looks like it is, and I am going to put a line right here. Just so that I can see it for now. Okay, So it's kind of hard to see, but I have a line right in the middle and then a line a third of the way from the left. Now I'm going to do a line here because I'm going to start my stripes in the middle. If I start on the top or the bottom, there's a better chance that as I go, it will start going in one direction, and toward the end, I might have a stripe that is at an angle, just because the longer the distance is that you're sewing those strips together, the higher likelihood that you're going to have a little bit of a slope. If I start in the middle, I don't have that much of a distance to sew, and so it won't show up if I do start slanting in one direction or another. So here is what we are going to need. You are going to need some strips, and I'm cutting mine 1.5 inches, and that will be pretty good because they'll finish at 1 inch, and since this is 14.5 inches, it's going to take about 15 strips to cover it. And you just want to have them long enough to go over this line just a little bit and go over the edge just a little bit. I just did, if it was a fat quarter, one direction. I think I did the length of the fat quarter. If it were a yardage, I just did with the fabric, because you can get a couple of them out of there. Then I also have the same with white strips. Now I did use multiple types of fabrics, all reds, just to give it a little scrappy look. You can do whatever you like on that. Now then you're also going to need stars, and these stars I did a tutorial on, and I'll put a link, and I'll put it right here, and then it'll be in the description box below. Click on more, it'll open up that bottom part, and at the very bottom they are usually there. Find the one that shows how to make these stars if you don't know how to make them already, and I'll walk you through how to make them. These are 4-inch finished stars, and they'll be perfect for this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to choose a white piece of fabric and a red piece of fabric. So I've got white on white, and it's got little stars on it, but I do need to be able to see which way is this way right here. This is right side up right here. So I'm going to take a white and put it right side up, and I want it to hang off over here, and I want it to hang off a little over here too. Okay, just like that. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this red. I'm going to just put it directly on top, and they're going to both be lined up with that line. So you don't need but, an inch or so of overlap up here, and then over here I'll just leave about an inch or a little bit more, something like that, just to be safe. Okay. Now you can take your pins, and here's our line right here. We can just pin that into place. Now what I have found as I've been making these is that usually I have to move my pins because it seems to feed the back and the front a little different, and this is usually loose at the end, and so I sometimes just take my pin out and just tighten it back up because I want this to be nice and tight on here and not pleated. So I'm going to take this to my sewing machine right here, and I'm going to start right here on the other side of this line, somewhere over here, and I am going to sew 1/4 inch away from this line all the way down. And just make sure you have that on the line. So you don't want to start off with your first one being slanted. So I'll bring it back when I've got it. And I'm just cutting off my threads. Otherwise I start getting some big nests in the back. And I'm flipping that back like this, and that looks good. So just kind of make sure that there's no pleats in between there. You can press it if you'd like, that's fine. This will take the heat. And I'm gonna grab a white one because I'm gonna go this way first. So again, I'm gonna find my right side, and I'm going to flip it right sides together. Put a pin right here, kind of at an angle there. There we go. And I am going to put one right here, but again, I may need to move that if I start getting this top fabric pushed a little bit. Now I do make my stitches bigger because there's quite a bit of friction as you're going through this thick mat, so it will help push it through better, and it will have a nice size stitch. So now I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch all the way down here. If I need to, I can remove this pin and pull this fabric a little bit just to make sure that it is not going to get a pleat in it. And this is a perfect project to use your walking foot if you have a walking foot. I'm not, because I know a lot of my viewers don't have one, but it will push the fabric through nice and evenly. So there we have that, and of course now we're ready for another red. Now I'm going to continue doing this just like I've been doing, right sides together, pinning until I get to the end, and I want to make sure it goes over just a little bit, unless it's just right on the edge. If it's right on the edge, that'll be fine. So I'm going to keep doing this, and when I get to here, I'll bring you back. All right, so I've gotten all the way up to the top, and it really just worked out perfect. You know, I mean, it didn't go off, it just perfect size. If it goes off, that's great. If it doesn't quite go off, for instance, if it was something like that, you could manage with that. That would be okay. If it's shorter, I would go ahead and add another piece just to keep it down in case your binding doesn't cover it. So now we are ready to start going down. So I've got my white, now I need a red. So let's just start with this piece right here. I am going to lay it just like I did earlier, right sides together, and make sure that that's all flattened out. And I kept this one straight. I was really fortunate to be able to keep that one straight, and I'll try to do this one too. I just made sure that they were smoothed down nicely. And now I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and this time I'm going to be going down this side right here, and I'll keep going until I get to the end or overlap. And there I have all of my strips, and this one I was just a little bit short on, but I'll be able to cover that up with the binding. One thing you can do is you could also just make this last strip a little larger, and I contemplated that, but I thought, no, I think I'm going to be able to be fine with it just like this. So now we've got the stripes on, and we'll go back and trim this up here in a minute. And as you can see, this line is all wonky over here. Let's go ahead and remark our 6.5 inch mark, or however much you need to mark on yours to be 1/3. So this is a 6.5 inch ruler, so I just lined it up with the edge, and this is heat erasable, so that's fine. Okay, so this is all going to be covered up over here. Now, if yours is taller than mine, you may want to put sashing between each of these blocks. Mine, if I put sashing in, I think are going to get the tips maybe trimmed off a little bit. I could possibly get a 1/2 inch piece in between them, but I'm not going to risk that and try to do that. So I'm just going to sew mine right together. And when I do, that's somewhat what you're going to see. And you're going to see I'm going to need a border here, and I'll need a border over here. So I think what I'm going to do first is just go ahead and sew these 3 pieces together. Okay. And there we have those 3 stars sewn together, and I think that's going to look real nice. Now, before I go any further, if this is stressing you out right here because you're not that good at piecing yet, but you love the idea of quilting as you go like this, you can make this easy, and you can just take a plain piece of fabric. It would look like this, and that looks really nice too. So if the stars intimidate you, you don't have to do them. If you enjoy piecing and you enjoy doing more intricate work, do the stars and follow along with the rest of this. If not, take a piece of fabric that is larger, and I would probably make it an inch larger than what you have here. Lay it right on the edge like we did with the stars, sew it straight, flip it back, press it down, and we'll be trimming on the outside edge here soon. So you can just do that, and that will be super easy, and it will also look really nice. So if you're doing the stars with me, what we now need to do is cut a 4.5 by 2 inch piece for here and a 4.5 by 2 inch piece over here, and just sew that on the ends, and I'll bring it back. And there we have a piece, and it covers that whole thing, and it's not much longer than what we need, so that worked out perfect. So that was a 2 inch by 4.5 inch piece on both ends. Now, I was going to add the strips on both sides of this, but I think I am going to go ahead and take a 2 inch piece, and I'm going to do the quilt as you go. I'm going to just take that 2 inch strip and lay it right here. So let me cut those 2 strips, and I'll bring you right back. Okay, here's 2 strips that are 2 inches wide. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay these and let them overhang right on that line. So I've got that edge right on that line. So let me just put a pin right here. And a pin right here. Okay, and then I'll just hold it down here. So I'm going to sew right on this line right here, a 1/4 inch away from that edge. All right, so I sewed that, and now we have all that raw edge covered up, and we're ready to do the quilt as you go this way. Now, here's where we're going to add this piece. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it again. We're not looking for perfection. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to line them up right along that piece of blue strip that I just added. And I am going to sew a 1/4 inch away from that edge. Okay, I've got that sewn down. Let's flip it back and take a look. Oh, that's looking really nice. And oh, I didn't even cut my points off. I thought maybe I might cut my points off. So if you get your 1/4 inch seam just right, your points will be in good shape. Now, if you wanted to, before you did this, you could do a stitch in the ditch like that to there, and then another stitch in the ditch right there to there. I might do that just to hold this piece down and not have it able to buckle up. So I'm just going to go, since this is a straight line, I'm not going to stitch over there. I'm just going to start right there, go all the way down, just stitching with my needle in that ditch or in that seam line, and then come over here and do the same thing. And that will just hold it down and keep it stitched in. You could even do another one right there if you want, but this will be more than enough. Okay, I have sewn right down here, and right down here, and that's got it nice and secure. So now we're ready for this last piece right here. Line it up, make sure it hangs over some on both ends. Put a few pins in it. And let's stitch a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And when we push that back, looks great, looks great. Okay, so what we want to do now, let me turn this over to this side. We are going to trim this down and get rid of these overhangs. Before I do though, you know what I think I'm gonna do? I think I am going to stitch really close to the edge, like right where that binding stitch is right there, and just go all the way around, and that way I can secure all of my strips in place, and then I'll bring it back. Okay, so as you can see, I just have a stitch going all the way around, and now I'm going to flip it back over, and we are going to trim off. You can use a rotary cutter if you like, but since I have rounded corners, I am just going to use scissors. And if you accidentally cut into your binding on your dish mat, that's okay. And we're just cutting this so that we won't have that bulk in our binding. And there we have it, all the threads off of it. So right now it doesn't look like it's done because it's not. We need to put the binding on it. So like I said, since mine needs the bias binding, I have already got mine made. And if you've never done rounded corners, I'll just give you a little demonstration. Now, when I make the bias binding, it always has a little bit of a tail, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it at a perpendicular line there so everything's trimmed up. And when I usually make this, I usually start my binding on the bottom. Now, I am going to sew my binding onto the back, and then I'm going to sew it to the front. And so I always go this way. And my overlap is going to be somewhere right in there. So I'm going to start right here. And I'm going to start sewing. Now when I sew, because this is bias binding, it is going to stretch perfectly as I go around the edges. It's going to do this really nice curve. And I'm just going to take my time, and it will just curve along that seam or that edge. And then I'll bring it on around. And I'm just going to keep on going just like that. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And when I get back up here, I'm going to sew to about here, and then I'm going to have 2 tails, and when I get to that point, I'll bring you back. Okay, so I've gone all the way around. This is where I started, right here, and I ended right here. So now what we need to do is we need to splice these 2 pieces together to finish our binding. So let's lay this one flat. And I'm going to cut off Probably about that much, maybe a little more. Okay. And try to make your cut nice and perpendicular. Mine's kind of wonky there. Okay. So let's take this piece right here that I cut off. And this right here is the thickness of my binding. It should be 2.5 inches wide, and it is. So what I'm going to do, making sure you have the width of your bindings like that, and it's this thick, I am going to lay this right here, matching up this edge. Then I'm going to overlap this one so that it goes all the way to the other edge. So there's a 2.5 inch overlap. And then I'm going to cut. So right now I have a 2.5 inch overlap, which is the same as the thickness of our binding. But I like to shrink it up a little bit. I like to take off, I don't know if that's like 1/8 of an inch or something. Make it just a little bit shorter than 2.5 inches. Make sure it's perpendicular too. There we go. And that way it will not buckle up on me. So now that we have just a shy 2.5 inch overlap, I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to put them inside each of the bindings. And with my thumbs, I'm going to hold it on this way. Now, right sides together, we are going to overlap the two. I am putting a pin over here because basically what we are doing now is just overlapping those two pieces of binding just like this. And this binding is going this way, this binding is going this way. We are going to sew across like a capital A. You've got this side, and like a capital A, we're going to sew across. Now you can put another pin right down here. Now you want to make sure your edges here and here are matched up. And a lot of times when I have a quilt or something, I have a little more room to leave open. On the smaller pieces, it's a little trickier. What you can do, again, is fold your piece and you have more room there like that. Okay, so I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to go from that corner to the corner underneath here, right there, straight line. And there I have those pieces sewn together. So let's check it before we trim it. It should lay nice and flat right there, and it does. So we're going to open this back up. We're going to trim above that seam line 1/4 of an inch away. I'm going to finger press it open just to reduce the bulk. And I came very close to the other seam, but it did not cross it, so that's good. Now I just need to sew the rest of this binding across here, and then I'll bring it back. Okay, I've got that all sewn on now, and just cutting some threads. So now what we need to do is we need to flip this binding toward the front. Just like that. Okay. So I've grabbed my school glue stick, and I've also grabbed my ironing mat here, because I'll just show you how I do this real quickly. In my other videos, I have shown you how to use Elmer's glue to help you secure your binding so it's easier to sew. This is the bias binding with the rounded corners, so we'll do this one a little bit together so that you can see how to lay the corners. So what I'm going to do is just take my glue stick, and it's purple right now, but when it dries it will be clear. And I'm going to go ahead and come over here, and this is a tight corner here. I should have sewn it a little bit closer to the edge, but we'll get it to work. And I'm going to go pull that like that. And I'm just going to add some clips to hold it. And you want to cover up your binding stitch that you stitched when you added your binding. So you just go right over that stitch like so. Now on this one right here, I think I'm just going to press. When I press, that will dry out that glue and it'll adhere. Okay, and I will get that in a second. I'll go ahead and do this and then I'll iron both at the same time. So let's keep going here. I like to get all around the corner. Now we're not going to leave these clips on when we sew. We're going to iron this and that glue will adhere. Now just make sure you get all of your loose ends from sewing down earlier. And also watch if you had a shorter piece that it gets covered with that binding and stitched down. You don't want it to fall apart. Okay, I'm going to bring the iron over and we are going to get this pressed and then do the corners. And we're going to keep going around. Now that that's down, I am ready to sew. So I'm going to take this over here to my sewing machine and I'm going to use a thread that matches my binding. because I'm going to be top stitching, and I'm going to top stitch as close as I can to this edge, maybe about 1/8 of an inch away. And then I'm going to bring you back. Okay guys, I haven't quite finished yet. I stopped and I have just a small section left, but I remembered I did not add my tag. So in those downloads that I shared with you that during the video of how to make your tags and quilt labels on Canva, I had shared with you a patriotic one, and we're going to add this one to it. So I'm just going to trim off those dotted lines. I'm going to put this on a ribbon, and then I'll show you how to fix that, because I've gone actually past where I would need to add it, but I'll show you how I do. Okay, so here I've put it on a ribbon. The cotton stuff. So I'm going to trim it down a little bit. Flip this over. Let's find the spot where I was at. Okay, I was right up here. So right now I don't have any place to stick it because I've sewn it down already. So that means I need to get Mr. Seam Ripper. And I am going to put it, I haven't sewed it on the top yet. So I'm good. Otherwise you'd be doing both of those. So I am going to see if I can get hold of a stitch right there. And once I get hold of one stitch, it will open up a little bit. Now you can put that little red ball in there and just be real careful, and that should cut it without cutting your fabric. And that did. And I just need to make it a little bit wider than the tag. That should do it. I think I'm going to trim it down just a little bit more because that binding's not very wide there. So now what I'm going to do is decide which way I want to have on top, and I'll have the flag. I'm going to push that in just like so. And if you want, in fact, I think I will. I'm just going to top stitch it right there. I realized I had the camera on pause when I showed how to push this in. Once I had top stitched it, I just pushed it in, and then I pinned it so that I had it secure. And then I came back over here to the front, and I just continued sewing from where I had stopped right over that tag. And in fact, I went over it once, I backed up, and then went over it again, and then just closed in till I reached my starting point. And I caught the top of that, so it is sewed right in and it is secure. So I need to remember to get those in when I first attach the top of my binding. It would be so much easier. Okay, so there's my tag, and it looks real cute on there. So here is the finished dish mat. Make sure there's no threads on it. And I think it looks really cute. I hope you like it too. I hope you get a chance to make one of these. It's really fun, and it can be used, like we've said in the past, for something other than a dish mat. You can use it to put on as a table topper. You can make placemats like this, all sorts of things. I even use them when I can to put jars after they come out of the canner, and they work really, really well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. I would really, really appreciate that. That would help my channel out a lot. Also, don't forget to like and share. Sharing this helps a lot as well. And all you have to do is click on at the bottom of the video, share, and it will let you select what platform you want to share it on. If you want to share it on Facebook, just click Facebook. And when you do that, it will show it on your page and you can just share it like that, or you can make a comment above it. But that helps my channel out a lot. I really appreciate all the people that are doing that, because I do know many of you are, and I really appreciate that. So until next time, I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you back here soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.